Kimeroish tzurim er'ena, migvois ashurena. When Bilam gazed over Klal Yisrael, he was compelled to give them a bracha. And what he was inspired by when he saw the grandeur and the beauty of Klal Yisrael, of Machane Yisrael, he saw not the Machane Yisrael itself, but he saw Meroish Tzurim Er'ena. He saw the origins of Klal Yisrael, which in their strength were like stone. Rashi says, Ani mistakel b'roshayim. I look at their origins, I look at their beginnings. Ubetchilas sharshayim, and in their roots. V'ani roya oisam miyusadim v'chazakim kitzurim v'gvoyis halois.
Recording in progress.
Ayidei avois v'imois. That because of the fathers and mothers of this camp, of this Machane Yisrael, this is what is what has produced what I'm seeing in front of me today. It was the Avos v'Imois. Today's Levaya is going to be insufficient in describing a woman and giving kavod achroin to a woman that raised 7 children, married 6 of them off by herself, followed her husband faithfully in the pursuit of a parnasa, moved to Eretz Yisrael at a time when it was uncommon, out of a dedication both to her family and to find a proper place to raise a family. If one looks at the Segal Mishpacha, the Segal family, Einaklach and Ar Einaklach, dedicated to learning to Torah, Mitasa Shleima, and this is attributable to Meroish Tzurim Er'ena, to the stone-like, the unrelenting dedication to Yados and to the seeds that were planted in the foundation of the Segal home. Her greatest nachas was to see the Einaklach. They illuminated her day because they illuminated her life at a time when children, when parents do not see don't have the vision to see forward and to see Paris. Mrs. Segal Hashem was someone obviously that did have the foresight and did have the vision and the dedication to plant seeds and to lay the foundation for a mishpacha that will attest to her greatness. There are great parents and great people, but the testament to a parent or a grandparent's greatness is the honor and the care and the love that the children show to that parent. If they can turn around and show honor to the parent and to the grandparent, so then that's an edus that the children see in their parent and grandparent their own potential, their own greatness, and that they can turn around and be machabed their parents. That's a completion to the message. Mrs. Segal was treated b'chayeha with the utmost nobility by her children and by her grandchildren. She carried herself that way. When she came to shul, whatever her condition was, she carried herself like a queen. She was smiling. Should be zoicha, her family should be zoicha to perpetuate her dedication. She should be a meilitz yosher. And she will be a meilitz yosher for her dairis. And we ask Umacha Hashem Elokim Dima Me'al Kol Panim. One might be moved to think that if someone b'soif yamav, that they lived a full life, so then it's not a loss, but it's a tremendous loss, because a family in losing a Rosh Habayis loses the yesod, loses the foundation of the bias. They don't have the image, they don't have the inspiration, they don't have someone that has a life of fulfillment and a life of accomplishment from whom to draw. And now the family will have to draw strength from her zikaron, from her memory, from her example. And so it may be children and grandchildren, our einaklach and dairis should bring her nachas and bring her schusim. Neshama should go maila, maila, el chayil, mechayil, el chayil. My mother was a very strong, special, very capable person. She was born in 1951 to parents who embodied chesed. They had a grocery store called the Wink Grocery Store that was a store that not only helped the Yidden get the kosher food that they needed, but at that time, also, the mayor that came from Shanghai, they needed a place to eat and food to be supplied. And that's what my mother's parents were not only capable, but very willing to do. My mother grew up in that environment. The Alta Mir, when anybody would mention names from the Mir Yeshiva, she said, "Oh, I remember them. Those were the two brothers, very chashuv. They always looked down when they walked. Or this person was very nice, always saying hello to her." That's the environment she grew up in. The Nava Minsker Zatzal,
When he came to Chicago, my mother told me that she knew the Novominsker Rav, his parents. So I went to the Novominsker Rav and I asked him, who I was. And he said, well, what's your mother's name? I said, Wink. He goes to me, I know your family better than you do. Still remember walking with my father's all near the grocery store and knowing all the chesed that they did. My mother was an honor student in school. And at that time, she was very capable of having math and all the other English subjects that she was an honor in. After she finished high school, she worked for the Aguda. And at that time, the Aguda was very involved in the Russian immigration, the Russian problem in Russia. And she was one of the persons that was in charge of helping the Russians. That was her job. And she even has a letter from the President of the United States stating that he was her shaliach, but he was her one to go to in order to get things done. In 1963, the family moved to Eretz Yisrael. We moved to Eretz Yisrael in Aliyah. And at that time, Aliyah wasn't like it is now, where you have your house ready and everything else. But my mother followed my father's wishes to go to Eretz Yisrael, and she loved to move there, but it wasn't easy. She was going into a camp where they first had all the immigrants go to. And at that time wasn't running water. She remembers she was telling me basically that at that time to clean the clothes, they heated a kettle of water at that time in order to wash the clothes and to get fresh water. It wasn't an easy time, but she never complained. As the Rav said, she always had a smile on her face, always saying thank you to people for whenever they did anything for her. We came back in 1978, and we even didn't come back straight to Chicago. We moved to Sioux City, Iowa, where my father was a shaychet for 2.5 years. And even at that time, there was hardly a kehillah in Sioux City, Iowa. But my mother still had the strength and determination to make it work for her family. There was a lot of anti-Semitism there. One of the things I remember when teenage girls would yell at us, dirty Jews, dirty Jews. And my mother ran after them, caught them, and she goes, who's dirty? Who's more dirty, you or me? And these girls were filthy. She took a strong stand, holding up to her morals. Another time also that she used her smarts, there was a community laundry in Sioux City, Iowa, and everyone, there was a light bulb, one light bulb for the whole room, and every time she came down there, it was very dark because someone kept taking the light bulb. She was tired of it, so she basically put up a sign, whoever takes this light bulb will be cursed, and it stopped. No one ever took it again. In 1978, my father was nifter. As the Rav mentioned, only one of my sisters was married at that time, and she still had to marry 6 other children, and she did not know where the parnasa was come from. My father was the sole provider. But nevertheless, she took it upon herself and the responsibility of herself to support him. At that time, we had no money that she knew of at that time. And as we was going through some of the drawers, she found $8,000. And she said, oh my goodness, we have something to support ourselves. Going through the papers, and the next week when she got in the mail from Devon Bank, there was a letter to my father saying that he owed the loan of $8,000. The same amount of money. My mother, as honest and truthful as she was, she knew she had to pay back the loan. So she went to the bank and she said, here's the $8,000. The bankers at that time kept telling her, you don't have to pay this. It's under your husband's name. You're not responsible. You don't have to pay it at all. You're putter. She said, nevertheless, he took out the loan. I have to pay it back, not knowing where the panasa was going to come from afterwards. During that time, after my father was nifter, she took over the salesmanship from Sinai Kosher, being a salesman for him and taking over the commission. And that's how we support ourselves. And she was very good at it. And she was also very smart in making money. At that time, when you paid the IRS and you overpaid, they used to give over 20% interest until they paid you back the loan. What she did was she used to give extra money, more than she owed, in order to get the 20% that the IRS would give. My mother always considered herself the luckiest and richest person in the world. Not because she had money, because of her kids and her grandkids that she had. As the Rav said, the covet that they gave her and the love and the respect that the children and the grandchildren gave her, calling her and wishing her good Shabbos, or just talking to her and asking for advice. She was their mother, she was the bubby. My kids were very lucky to grow up with her in Chicago. They all have great fond memories of how, when they visited Bubby, how she took care of them. The last 7 months of my mother's life have been filled with great, great isurim. She went into the hospital 7 months ago with the bad pneumonia, and they put her on a vent. Ever since that time, she has unfortunately been deteriorating and not well, but not once did I see any complaint on her face. Always a smile and trying to get attention when she was able to listen to us and hear us. My mother was a hoy shalom. I don't know anybody who has any taina against my mother at all. And in fact, all the relationships that my mother had, whether young or old, would always talk about how great and give thanks to my mother when they knew her. When we grew up, my friends came to my mother for advice. I didn't know if they came for me or to talk to my mother. It was always turned out at the end of our meeting, when I had with my friends coming over, and my sister's friends, they would always be sitting down talking to my mother. I remember one friend of mine that was having problems, and my mother would talk to him. I would go to shul while he would stay for Shalosh Shidduchos with my mother and talk to him, and she would give him chizuk. As I said, my mother was Ohe Shalom. I don't know anybody who has any times against her. I would like to give Hakaras Hatov to Dr. Greenblatt and Dr. Adler. Dr. Adler, basically for the last 7 months that my mother's in the hospital, has been giving me daily advice and showing care, how much he cared about my mother by asking about her all the time. I'd like to give a Hakaras Hatov specifically also to my sister Adara and her daughter Bailey, who every night, since they couldn't visit, and I couldn't visit at that time for the first 4 months, my mother in the hospital, personally, they would Zoom her and talk to her into the wee hours of the night. My mother was always a night person. So at that time, could be 11, 12, 1 o'clock, they would talk to my mother for hours and hours, keeping her happy and keeping her mind going. When I got married, my mother was an almano. My wife, Sarah, at that time, treated her like a mother, never questioning any time that I had to do something for my mother, whether it was taking shopping or doctor's appointments or going to do something for her. Or my mother coming home, coming to us for every Shabbos. In fact, my wife didn't even think anything of it until after more than 20 years, she was talking to a friend of hers and she was telling, yeah, my mother comes every Shabbos. She said, what? Your mother comes every Shabbos? It's amazing. My wife didn't think anything of it. Didn't think of it. She thought it was not only the proper thing to do, but the right thing to do. And my mother appreciated it. My mother appreciated it so much that she said, basically, she called her daughter. I was at Levi once when a chashuv family member, and this is a chashuv family member that you would think there was no problems, and there weren't any problems with Shalom in the family, but nevertheless, he mentioned in the Levaya that you have to work for Shalom. The family has to work for Shalom in order to keep Shalom going. My mother was the glue of the family. She kept us together. She was the core. She was the matriarch. We have what we have because of her, and we are what we are because of her. The priest also, I asked the Sandik for a bracha, and he said to me, I'll tell you something, I'm going to give you a bracha that you should have shalom in your family, and don't think it comes easy. You have to work for it. You have to work for it and work for it because that's the only way to keep shalom. Don't take it for granted. Don't take it for granted. Mommy, this time, I'd like to ask Mechila for my family, my children, myself. You should be pleased, Mommy. I want to make sure for everybody. Go to Shemayim because the Kadosh Baruch Hu knows what you went through in this world. What you went through alone with your suffering for the last 7 months. Please be a mitzvah sharp.
Going to say the Kelmoli now. Kelmoli rachamim shoichein b'amroimim hamse v'nucha nechoino al kanfei ashchino v'malois kedoshim utoyim kizoyai harakia mazhirim Es nishmas tzipayra bas Yehuda shalcha la'olamam Began Eden Tehei Menuchoso Lochein Bal Harachamim Yastireha B'Seise Kenafav Loilomim Yitzor B'Tzor HaChayim Es Nishmaso Adonai Hu Nachaloso V'Sanuach B'Shalom Al Mishkavo V'Noimar Amen.
Please be seated for a moment. This concludes our Levaya here on the Shul. Kfura will take place in Eretz Yisrael and Har Zaysim tomorrow evening, approximately 2 hours or so after the plane arrives. We're going to be forming a procession to the airport for those who are able to join us. We're going to be facing east on Pratt. Please make sure you obtain a orange safety sticker for the inside windshield portion of your vehicle, as well as a magnetic flag to put on top of your car. Make sure your bright lights and hazard lights are on at all time. For those who just like to be malav a little bit, we're going to do a small procession just probably to the corner, maybe a little bit around the corner as well. Shiv information will be posted shortly, probably through the shul, and will be posted on our website, ChicagoJewishFunerals.com as well. At this time, everyone please rise as we make our way from the shul.